It's the Andy and Remington Steel Show on your screens tonight. It's the Andy and Remington Steel Show for your home delight. We're talking about Age of Sigmar and anything else that is cool. Talking about Warhammer Fantasy, it's easy to learn the rules. Andy and Remington, Andy and Remington, Andy and Remington Show.
Welcome one and all, it's time for another spicy, red hot, sizzling, tender, succulent, moist episode of the Andy and Rem Show. Episode number 171. Dragons. Lots of dragons, full armies of dragons, and we know how much Remington loves dragons, especially these new ones. So, for anyone who's playing the Remington's Blinds game, I can see that Colin has predicted they are up. Right? Let's find out. And that is a correct guess. The blinds are indeed up. Good evening, Mr. Remington.
Hello, Andy. How are you?
I am radiant.
Now, if you're a new viewer to the show and you've stumbled across us, what is it we do? And what are they do? What are we doing for them?
You'd think there's anyone out there that hasn't heard of us after 171 episodes and countless battle reports.
You never know. There's new people coming in. I'm introducing a lot of new people to this hobby and a lot of fans, recent fans, with my barrage of videos that I'm bringing out on my personal YouTube channel.
But no Remington's Pillow Talk yet.
Tomorrow it's happening. Remington Warhammer. So you're going to see some awesome stuff. So if you like the stuff I've been putting up, I'm going to answer all your questions in Remington's Pillow Talk coming tomorrow. But basically, Andy, what do? We talk about Age of Sigmar predominantly. But Kings of War, we talk about basically miniature wargaming.
Fantasy gaming mostly. We may dabble into sci-fi occasionally on this show, but usually only in a kind of derisory tone.
And what gives you, Andy, the authority to talk about such things?
Me personally?
Yes,
well,
you.
Being a fantasy gamer for many a year, being a Kings of War tournament winner and regular podium finisher, I think that gives me some authority to talk about fantasy games, don't you? And
Absolutely.
Also, not only that, but from a journalistic point of view, if that's your bag, we were first on the scene, breaking the news when Age of Sigmar was only being rumoured. We were there, live streaming, analysing the rumours, and then as soon as it hit, who was there? Us, filling up the first entire page of YouTube search results for the first few months.
In fact, may I add to that, Andy? The first time I saw you was on YouTube, and you were at some Gen Con event, something big in America, and you were Adepticon, and you were interviewing some highly popular YouTube Warhammer influencers, and that's how we met. And you came across my amazing content, and you reached out, and you just realised this guy has been in the game for over 30 years, maybe even more. 35 years of Warhammer, and this guy knows his stuff, and he's got an awesome channel, and he's obviously a tactical genius, so we should get together and get some games in.
Well,
something like that.
what I saw, and you'll like how this relates to your football team of choice, but you'd been around a long time, but you'd been kind of in obscurity, and then I saw you, and I thought, there's someone I can pluck and take to the top of his game and bring to a worldwide audience. So you're essentially like the Jamie Vardy Warhammer YouTube.
Or you're Professor Bunsen and I'm Beaker. Is that what you're suggesting? I'm just showing my age there, haven't I? Never mind. Yeah, also you're a celebrated games designer. Cheeks.
Celebrated, yes. Peaks, the legendary hamster battle card game, which I believe is still available for purchase with a link in the description.
That's pretty awesome. That game's called Cheeks with a Z on the end. And in fact, there are 2 special editions with a Remington character, that's me, and an Andy 2D6 character. So that's kind of cool. I never got a free copy, so why should you? That's all I'm saying. So what have we got on the menu tonight, Andy?
Well, I know how much you love dragons. So we've got quite a bit about dragons on the menu tonight. So I'm sure you'll have your say. You did go on a bit of a dragon rant last week.
I did. So, we're talking about dragons. Games Workshop is furiously protective over their IP, intellectual property, if you didn't know. And many YouTubers talking about Age of Sigmar and Warhammer and stuff have been what's the word? Not handcuffed, but gagged about showing certain content that violates the IP. But what with dragons? Who's got the IP on dragons? No one. Surely. They're things of myth and legend. So why would Games Workshop want to use something that can be copied so much?
Well,
that's the quandary right here.
they're not really calling them dragons, are they? They give them all kinds of weird and wonderful names, but mostly avoid using the word dragon. So let's have a look through this whole article, see if they use the word dragon in it. So this is the article about building an all-dragon army, but do any of the miniatures actually use the word dragon in their names? Let's find out.
I've seen the word Dracoth.
Well, Draconith models, Knight Draconis, Dracothion, the great Drake of legend, entire armies of dragon-mounted Stormcast. So you see they're using dragon with a small d. And all the other words that they're using have a capital D, look there. Drake.
Of course, Dracule is means dragon, doesn't it? Did you know that? In Romanian.
I know it now.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it is an odd little phenomenon, that, isn't it? How they're extremely protective and they've come up with all these weird and wonderful fantasy creatures. Particularly Stormcast have been riding most of them into battle. And now we just get dragons. And in particular, the red one.
Yeah.
It's just your standard dragon. Doesn't even have any Stormcast armament on it. It's just a nice dragon.
So you've uncovered a huge scoop here, Andy, haven't you? In this investigation. Our investigation. Games Workshop have not used the word dragon in any of their promotion of their new models.
Well, they have used it to name articles and within sentences, but they haven't used it to Remington's dropped off the face of the earth. Oh, he's back. Had a bit of a strange view off the top of your head for a moment there. So, dragons. None of them are called dragon. They're not called dragon riders, but they will freely throw around the word dragon in the Warhammer community when discussing the army, but not using it in any of the official materials, as far as I can.
Interesting. Very interesting. That's just me switching cameras to show you how interested I am.
But do you prefer the kind of weird and wonderful creatures, like big celestial cats? Weird body parts.
That's a great question.
Lumineth kangaroo, space kangaroo monsters.
I don't know. My answer is I don't know. I like the old stuff, you see, because it's sort of reminiscent of something else that you could attach to, because I'm a big fan of history and mythology and folklore. So I liked having one foot in the real world if you like, in the real world of folklore. But now we're not in that at all, are we? This is total new lore
It is
within
actually
E.
that's something I've been thinking about a bit, and I've been realizing that as far as Age of Sigmar goes, visually I prefer all the new armies that were specifically made for Age of Sigmar, the game. Any of the other races, including, I'm afraid, the Daughters of Cain, kind of feels like they're just clinging on the old world a little bit. And I think it could have been, especially with the old world coming back, there's the opportunity there for a nice clean breakaway to the Age of Sigmar, doing away with all the classic old races that are just kind of hanging out there. How do you feel about that?
I'm excited that the old world's coming back. I really am. I think that would be fascinating. I wonder what the game mechanics will be like. I mean, I've got a square-based dwarf army. I've got a square-based halfling army. Could be an empire army, I suppose. So I'm keeping them on squares, just waiting for that huge mass blocks of battle game. Is it something you're excited about, Andy? I didn't answer your question, did I? Because I didn't know the answer.
Well, there are
I
those of
didn't
us
know.
that are hanging on to our square-based armies specifically for the old world coming back, and we didn't convert them all to round-based Sigmar.
Yeah.
But
But how does that give Games Workshop new revenues? Why should they bother bringing the old world back if they didn't have something up their sleeve
I'm
that's
sure
more
they
than
have something
just
up
a
their
new?
sleeve.
It can't be just a new rule book, can it?
Well, it could be a starter box. That remains to be seen. But do you think that they could feasibly shove all the races from Age of Sigmar that have a foot in the old world back into the old world permanently and shut the door and say, okay, these are the Age of Sigmar races now? Got your Stormcast,
Got you.
Cauldron
Got you.
Overlords, Fire Slayers. Who else is brand new?
Got you. Well,
Deepkin,
yes,
Lumineth.
yes.
Is that a way
Well,
you would consider going with it, or do you think that would
yeah. I
off
mean,
too much of the player base?
but what about Chaos? What Chaos Warriors? You know, they're a very much big thing in the old world, weren't they? Chaos Marauders. All their army is pretty much the same, right?
Pretty
Um,
much.
I mean,
It,
everything in Chaos can be, you can be imagine that in the old world because the old world was battling against these otherworldly forces, so it kind of Chaos kind of crosses the bridge between the two worlds, if you like. But you know, I don't think Stormcast cast belong there at all.
how do you feel
And
if the old world hadn't exploded, it had just been completely taken over by the evil, ruinous powers, and all the good races had been subjugated, and at that point, Sigmar had been up in a new realm that had been magically forged for him. He'd created these golden warriors who then swooped down into the old world to save the day. How would you have felt if that was the Age of Sigmar?
oh, so you mean they just carried on the narrative but didn't completely destroy it and wait a couple of years or something?
Yes, and
Um,
you could still add realms because they would have set the precedent with Sigmar being off in his own realm building this army. And they've already
no,
got
well,
the
look,
realm of chaos, haven't they? So they could have still opened it up for realm gate war, but the old world
yeah,
would have still existed.
yeah, but what you're saying is you're looking back at 5 6 years of history, and you know what has actually happened is that Games Workshop's become a bigger, better, more streamlined company, and you know you can call me a Games Workshop fan. I am, but the numbers don't lie, do they? I mean, that's why we look at the share price every week or so, because it shows that Games Workshop is as a you know cents and dollars company becoming better, and therefore fingers in more pie. So whatever they did, it reinvigorated the hobby. You know, whether you like it or not, as an old schooler, that's what's happened. And from going into my hobby shop and seeing Warhammer Fantasy shelves shrinking, you know, and things not being bought except by me for a number of years, to now Age of Sigmar products outselling 40k, they've obviously done something right. You know, do I miss the old world? Of course I do.
William says that
Yeah,
Andy Chambers said that they should have just set AOS in the realms of chaos,
nah.
which is kind of similar to what I was saying.
Yeah,
I don't think
I
the
don't
old
know.
world needed to be completely destroyed, is what I'm saying.
Yes, it wasn't just the old world, though, was it? It was the old rules, wasn't it? And it was completely reinvented to be simpler and not need so many models in an army.
Yes. But on the other
There was
hand,
that
they
side of it.
also were clinging to that past as well by allowing people to transfer their old armies over and keeping like your boring old humans and dwarves and elves. By boring old, I mean they don't have antlers or flames coming out their eyes.
Yeah, I don't know. So I think there's a number of reasons. It was maybe flagging sales. Maybe they wanted to keep hold of their IP. Um, maybe they just, yeah, obviously those are the things that drive a company, right? Um, so they did something right, is what I'm saying. I think the most important thing they did as a fan, and something that fans used to complain about non-stop on YouTube, is the fact that Games Workshop has become much more of a community based company with, going to conventions, having its own content, and now launching its own TV channel. I mean, it's completely done a 360 from having a closed door policy to now being, um, you know, it's like it's everywhere.
You know what I
You
would
know,
like to have seen though? I'd like to visit an alternate dimension where they didn't blow up the old world, they just carried on with Warhammer Fantasy, maybe changed it a little bit, but stuck with it, and then also became that company that embraces the community, starts
yeah.
reaching out more, see what that would have been like and how the company would have been faring now under those circumstances, just to see what the big difference maker was. Whether AOS actually helped or whether it was just along for the ride and it was actually the community engagement.
Well, I think we should turn to our audience here, Andy, because the comment stream here is going mental. So, look, first off, welcome everybody. Wayne Catlin, hello, mate. He says, I think the fantasy community is the one thing that ruined that game. He felt like an outsider when he was trying to get in 2012.
That's about the time I was getting back into it as well. And there was definitely a very strong embedded tournament scene. And it seemed like a lot of the players, my experience was starting off on Universal Battle when I was getting back into it. And playing dwarves, first thing that I ran into was a lot of bitterness from people who hadn't even played against me before, just because I was playing dwarves. So they assumed it was going to be a cannon list. So they couldn't bring any monsters because they'd just be dead in turn one. So I sensed a lot of bitterness immediately purely because I was playing dwarves. So that kind of, it was kind of splintering in the community already by the time I was getting into it. People who were really unhappy with certain aspects of the way certain races were. Dwarves was just seen as boring. So there's
Yeah,
immediate
they're boring and
hostility
slow,
towards
weren't
you
they?
as soon as you took dwarves. But your cannons, they shut down magic, they steal your magic dice, so you're not even going to get to use any of your fun spells. So anyone, even a new player who doesn't know how to do any of that stuff, immediately you're tarred with the boring brush if you take dwarves. That's what I encountered.
Will Matthews says, I think it needed a total reset. Age of Sigmar brought me back. You brought me back. What film's that from? AOS brought me back after missing most of 7th and all of 8th edition. Wow. Well, I got back into Warhammer Fantasy. Totally isolated I was, and I found sort of YouTube channels putting up battle reports. Things like comedy chat, things like Blue Table Painting, which was just an entrepreneur in America who'd built up a Warhammer and 40k painting company and just was scaling his business, and he'd post videos every day. We tried to get him on the channel, didn't we?
There were technical issues on that episode,
I'd love to see
fortunately.
what's going on in his world again. But yeah, there was some groovy content out there, and it kind of, you learnt the rules sort of that way, if you like. But it was very dense. But the thing was, in the year that Age of Sigmar kind of in the year that Warhammer Fantasy ended, loads of new models came out and loads of new content came out, right? you had the end times books and all the end times models that came out
It was
with
like
it.
a celebration of the end of fantasy, wasn't it? So you had like Nagash and the Glotkin and all that stuff.
It was, but then just when you got your head around the rules and like even painting all these models, everything died. So, for example, like Wood Elves, Wood Elves got this 8th edition book, which if you look on eBay, the Wood Elf 8th edition book is pretty pricey. But they had a new rule book. It was all exciting. Had some new models, I think, for this. Yeah, of course they did. They had the Sisters of Thorn. They had the Wild Riders come out. They had the sort of what they call the Woodcutter guys and the new Eternal Guard. So each faction, well, a lot of the factions had new books and some new models. So it was, I guess, that just wasn't enough. They needed a big launch of something. What I miss the most, Andy, is the old world machinations. Of the empire, the machinations of the empire. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. Do you
The
think
world.
though that you could probably have some of that if you were fully engrossed in all the AOS content that's out there now? Because apparently that's got a lot more intrigue in it compared to the
Possibly.
start.
I mean, I'm talking Gotrek, the world of Gotrek and Felix. I've listened to the new audio books about Gotrek, and he's wandering through the realms, and it's a much more of a magical, fantastical place. It's not grounded in the sort of intrigue and normality of the old world that's got this, things like Skaven that are living among humans and chaos that have, tainted cults of people. So,
Yeah, I think we've said before
you
that
know,
at the launch of AOS, they didn't do a very good job grounding your average person in there and giving you something to relate to. You didn't have your regular humans as a main focal point. It
um,
was all about the Stormcast and then the chaos.
yeah, which kind of sucked because the first Age of Sigmar novel that came out, what's it called? It's basically when the first lot of Stormcast come down, and the very first chapter in the first Age of Sigmar book follows some sort of primitive humans running around, and they're being hunted by sort of chaos marauders. And I got quite excited, but then you soon realise that the world of Age of Sigmar has nothing to do with these humans at all, you know. So that kind of sucked, and they were like primitive. The Gates of Azir. Will Matthews is just like amazing on this show. Whenever we pause because we can't remember something, he's there. You know, proper moderator. Thank you, Will. But yeah, it's kind of and then we long to find out what happened to the dwarves, and you'd see references to old cities and bits and bobs, and yeah, kind of still a mystery in some ways. But I've noticed there's some new novels coming out, and one of them is was going to be called Witch Coven, but they've changed it. Did you see that pop up on Warhammer Community?
No.
There's a Daughters of Cain novel coming out. What I'm saying, it looks pretty
Ah,
cool.
and it's not called Witch Coven.
It's close. It's called Blade. It's called something Coven. Maybe someone can help me instead of me having to look it up. I can look it up. It's not a problem. But yeah, one of the reasons why I like Daughters of Cain is because um, there's a sort of a druid aspect to them that I can, as a fan of British ancient history, there's some of that in there, I guess, with witches and stuff, druids, cauldrons, and there's something sort of familiar. That's why I like that army. It's not completely fantastical, is what I'm saying.
Well, fantasy, but familiar fantasy. Elements of
Familiar fantasy.
familiarity in there.
Yeah, and back to dragons. Dragons are the most familiar thing in fantasy, aren't they? Dragons is the problem. A dragon is the most uh, famous fantasy creature ever, wouldn't you say?
Famous, probably the most famous, like, non-humanoid sea creature. You'd put it up there with, like, elves and dwarves, wouldn't you? Gnomes.
Yeah, I mean, do you think every race should get a dragon? What about that?
Well, they're presenting dragons in a slightly different way now, though, aren't they? So they're not just these creatures that everyone seems to tame, so everybody has one.
Well,
They,
almost everyone did have one, didn't they?
yes,
You had a zombie dragon, you had a wood elf dragon, you had a high elf dragon, you had the black dragon for dark elves, you had dragon for you know, empire, you had chaos dragon, you had a two-headed chaos dragon.
the
You
dragons are
had the
more of a coherent race now, I think, with more of
yeah.
a kind of hierarchy. And then
Yeah,
you've got their lesser kin, like your Dracoths and so on,
I mean, you had
which
wyverns, didn't you? Orcs had the wyvern, which is kind of like a dragon. It's serpentine, isn't it? Did any race not have a dragon?
dwarves.
Dwarves, yes, you're right. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because the dwarves are so associated with the dragon from Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
Yeah, the dwarves didn't really have any monsters.
No, the dwarves hate dragons. Then
The Warhammer world assume they must hate monsters in general, and they have slayers, don't they?
yes,
So if you were a dragon turning up with your best friends, the dwarves, and you say, "Who's that guy with the orange hair down there?" "Oh, that's just our resident dragon slayer." Oh, I think you'd know what was up at that point, wouldn't you? So
you had troll slayers, didn't you? You had dragon slayers, and you had
demon slayers.
demon slayers.
Shall we delve into this a little bit then? Because you're going to be able to make entire dragon armies now. When it says entirely dragon, that might be a bit misleading, though. You might actually have to have some wingless dragon kin in there, such as Dracoths, for instance. They're going to be the Battleline. But you will be able to have an entirely dragon-faced army, even if some of them do. Not only that, but the one thing that excited me, is that...
Oh, Covens of Blood. I've just found it, Andy.
Now,
I'll
before
send you a link.
we go back to dragons, what do you think about this sentence? The Knights Excelsior Stormhost can take elite Annihilators, Decimators, Hexers, and Retribute Battleline unit.
That's like loads, isn't it? That's
Annihilators and Retributors being the things you don't like that hit you with hammers and are tough to kill.
but not against Pit of Shades.
Not against Pit of Shades, no.
Okay, Annihilators protect. What are the protectors? The ones with the spears?
They might be the ones with the spears, and Decimators, the big axes, maybe?
That's man. So, yeah. Well, I mean, whatever. The thing is, Andy, after our last game, which you can watch on the Andy 2D6 channel, which is phenomenal.
You can also watch a slightly different, more up close and personal video version of it on Remington's channel as well, which is linked in the description somewhere near the bottom.
You can in the description.
But you're feeling confident after that.
Let me just check the description. Right. Oh, Rem's channel. Ah, you actually did include it, Andy. I'm proud of you. Remington Steel Warhammer is the channel you're looking for. Yeah. After the last battle report we did, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone too much. But yeah, I'm not really scared of Stormcast anymore. You can reel off these lists and these combinations, and dragons can have this, and this superhero Stormcast that appears and auto does 30 wounds. I'm not scared anymore. The fact is, these golden armored warriors, pin-up boys, couldn't defeat a bunch of screaming girls wearing hardly any clothes, armed only with kitchen knives. So, I'm not scared, Andy. So, bring your dragons, bring your dragon riders, bring your protectors, bring your executioners, whatever. We're not scared.
Well, I can give you a sneak preview of the list I've got planned for this week if you want.
Go on. I don't think I'm going to change mine.
Now, the new battle tome isn't out yet, so I can't take Annihilators as Battleline. But that'll be fun. But I can reveal that it has Yndrasta in it. It also has a Stardrake. Squeezing both of those into one list, and we've upped the points limit to 1,615 points. You might think that's a weird amount. It was going to be 1,600, but this is Remington we're dealing with here. So we've added 15 points onto it as the Remington allowance, because he never comes in on points anyway. He's always 15 points over. So we thought we'd just build that into the limit this time.
So I've got 100 extra points to spend, but I actually don't have any more models I can bring. Yeah, the only model I can bring in that I didn't bring in last time is probably a Hag Queen. Or I can bring in a bunch of extra spells. But yeah, it'd be interesting, Andy. I mean, the thing is, it's like you can talk about this unit and that unit, but a lot of it depends on the mission as well, doesn't it? You know,
That is true.
what is it we've got to do? But having said that, if you bring in a dragon and Yendrasta, pretty scary. Are you bring any Dracoth riders?
I don't think I was able to fit the concussors in there.
Uh,
Really.
So what about your mass shooting? Are you bringing? Are you sticking with the?
Most of the shooting has been taken out for this particular game. After
Okay.
its subpar performance, shall we say. It's time.
So you're going for a combat list.
Yes, but that's not the end of my Stormcast shooting career. There will be time for that to come back. Stormcast Battletome, when that comes out, then I'm interested to see whether there are any changes to the shooting. I've got a suspicion because I saw a picture of some of the points value. I believe that the ballista is going up in points. I'm seeing some. If that's the case, that's very but it is very good, so that would be fair, I think.
I'm pleased. So you're not going to have any ballistas. Are you going to have any of the crossbow shooting ones? What are called Vanguard,
The
Vindicators?
long strike crossbows, I do not have any of those. I have got the Judicators because they're Battleline, so I haven't got any of them.
Okay, what about Liberators? How do you feel about Liberators?
I don't rate them very much against Daughters of Cain, the way I'm looking at it at the moment.
What would you rate them against?
I don't know. For some reason, they don't seem to survive very long against a lot of your units. I think the amount of attacks you're putting out, their saves aren't quite good enough.
I think if you can get them in combat early, because the longer you're in combat with Daughters of Cain troops, the worse it is for you.
Yes, that is definitely true. Because the amount of attacks you're putting out, when the Liberators are trying to hold you up for the whole game, it would be a decent roll for them if they're against something that it's like a pillow. But the Daughters of Cain, by turn 3, 4, and 5, it seems like here's 50 saving throws you have to make, Liberator unit. Oh, what's that? You failed half of them. Well, off you go then.
Now, how do you feel, Andy, and guys in the audience, about us maybe thinking about some house rules and little rule changes? One of the thing I'm thinking of is the heroic recovery and stand up and fight. The sort of commands and hero abilities where you can bring back troops that have died, or you can heal wounds on your hero.
Yes, heroic ability.
Yeah, I think you should be only allowed to do one of those once per game. So once per game, a hero can have a finest hour. Once per game, a hero can somehow climb back up after being mortally wounded and fight on. Once per game, a unit that's been decimated, maybe some of them can get up with broken limbs and chopped arms and heads and somehow keep fighting. Yeah.
Do you think command abilities and hero abilities should be limited to once per game?
Once per game, yeah, for each type, yes.
Could be potentially tricky because you're going to have a lot of command points left over when you get to a certain point in the game, I think.
Yeah, but there's other command points you can use, aren't there?
I think there would need to be more command abilities if you're going to bring in a rule like that, because after a couple of turns, then you're going to run out of options, I think.
Yeah, but this is what I mean. Your liberators are fighting my witch elves, which almost like undead are potentially able to come back, and it's not really plausible, is what I'm saying.
Well, with rally, you can't come back in combat at least.
Yeah, I mean, okay, maybe rally you could do that if they've actually failed a bravery test, and troops that have run away can come back, rather than troops that die. If you're dead, you're dead. That's what I think. Unless there's some sort of life spell that can bring you back. But just
I can actually see your logic there. So what you're thinking is that troops that have been taken away, been removed from play as a result of a failed battle shock test, should be put to one side, separate from the dead pile, and then those troops would be eligible to return through some kind of rally rule.
yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking if you've got an army with lots of troops, if you've got like Gloomspite Gips and you've got 20, 30 little goblins, not really plausible that, after a bunch of them have been decimated by a dragon, that they would reappear just because someone tells them to get up again. Um, I don't know. It's. Do you think they've made that rule because combats were being over and done with too quickly? I mean, within one round, a whole unit can easily get killed if you can't bring them back and you can't buff them as much as you can in this version of the game. Maybe that's what's happening.
Well, there were some factions that had more access to bringing models back than others, and summoning. Maybe just giving everyone a list of that is.
Yeah, I mean, look, it favors. I'm not saying it because it doesn't favor me. It's favored me, right? But yeah, that's one little thing. Maybe we'll play it again a few more times, and maybe I'll get down with it a bit more.
So I just read something here on this little preview for the Stormcast battle. It says that Stormcast Eternals are one of the most versatile armies in Warhammer Age of Sigmar. You don't say. They only have 79 war scrolls, which is more than most of the other armies combined, I think. How could they not be versatile with that many different options?
That's a joke, man. A joke.
Anyway,
it's a joke because they keep bringing more out as well. I think maybe they're just going for the 100. Do you think?
Maybe they are going for the 100. But I don't see why they couldn't just give the Stormcast a little bit of a rest. Maybe just do 2 new Stormcast units instead of like 8. And instead give us some more Fire Slayers or something. Aren't there probably... There's probably about 12... Even that many Fire Slayers war scrolls? About 12 maybe?
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at it's like orcs and goblins, aurochs and goblins, if you put all of Gloomspite Gits, Savage Orcs, the Crawl Boys, and the big yellow ones with the armor on, I wonder how many raw skulls they've got put together. Maybe something like 60, maybe more.
Why don't the Fire Slayers get... Look, I'll give GW some free ideas here. Fire Slayers, Fireball Cannon. There you go. How's that for a new unit?
I think they've backed themselves into a box there by just having everything centered around fire all the time.
But what about the Caradron Overlords? Here's a new unit for them. You've got the gun haulers, which are the smallest of the flying ships. How about like little fighter-sized little planes?
What, gyrocopters, you mean?
But smaller than a gyrocopter. Like just a little one dwarf pilot. It's not much bigger than his body. They can zip around. But to differentiate them from other things that move fast, how about they have a minimum move distance? So they can't stop moving once they go into battle.
Well, what about like a little vulture, but it's a robotic one,
Robo birds, because they already have the little owl that lives on the shoulder of the Thunderer gunnery sergeant.
That could be pretty cool, like little
swarm of those like owls with like drill beaks or something,
or parrots. What about that? Call them pieces of 8 or something, and they're like drone parrots. They just basically pick up the gold.
What about the Deepkin? New unit for them.
Oh, Deepkin! There's so much potential.
There's so many fish. They don't have a giant squid yet, do they? Do they have a squid? Oh yeah, they might.
Amazing.
They have some kind of octopus-like creature.
Amazing. Giant octopus, giant squid. You got the crabs. Please, not stingrays.
Do they have?
Is it stingrays? The flat ones? Not like the kale. I don't want those. They're awful.
Do they have a pufferfish?
Pufferfish could be kind of cool.
It could have 2 forms as well, the pufferfish, so it would have different rules depending on what state it's in at the time.
You got sharks, piranhas. They're too small, I guess.
Brad says Fire Slayers, mini droths, like baby magma droth.
Okay.
That would be cool.
I mean, shouldn't fire slayers be sort of like coveting the eggs of the magma droth, right? That'd be kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, with all the new monsters, magma droths kind of look a bit like donkeys compared to some of the mammoth war beasts that have come out right now.
Well, what I'm saying is there's no reason that they can't come out with 1 or 2 new units per year for each of the factions, rather than just leaving them to go stale, which it seems like they are.
Yeah, but have you got to then put out a new book? You know.
You don't have to put out a new book; just put out a new war scroll for it.
But then you're looking at battle plans. You not battle plans. You know what they're called, battalions. You're looking at all the different things, the synergies that it could affect, and then if that's not included in a book, it's kind of annoying. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like I don't know how long have we been out now? Maybe 2 years.
Quite a while now.
There's so much they could do with those for sure.
I immediately think of the Fire Slayers because they were pretty much immediately, just a few months into AOS, they came out, didn't they? And if they had anything new since then other than endless spells, whereas Stormcast have had like 65 new things since then.
I think that's purely because they can't think of anything.
I don't think that's true, though. Surely they have enough imagination. They've come up with all these ridiculous and wonderful creatures for the Stormcast. Surely they could just turn that imagination over to the Fire Slayers. Not that wild.
They looked at dwarves and they looked at sort of the idea of the troll slayer. That's not, to my knowledge, that's not part of Lord of the Rings, is it? That's like a Games Workshop thing. So they kept hold of that part of their own lore and turned, troll slayers into these fire slayers, right? And then they realized actually there's not many kind of variations on naked dwarves we can do.
Well, I want people who are not watching this live, but if put it in the chat as well, but anyone who's watching this after the fact, in the comments, ideas for new units for the existing factions that have been woefully neglected. So your Fire Slayers, Terran Overlords, Deepkin, and so on. So, to change topic a bit here, got some rules for the Cruel Boys, and monsters are doing quite well at the moment, aren't they? So how about this? The Beast Skewer Killbow. To determine the damage characteristic for an attack made with this weapon, roll a number of dice equal to the wounds characteristic of the target unit. Damage characteristic is equal to 2 plus 1 for each roll of 5+, up to a maximum damage characteristic of 12. So against massive monsters with loads of wounds, like your big gargants, then you can end up potentially doing 12 wounds in a shot.
Okay, so let's say what's the beast? What is the Killbow?
It's a big giant, it's almost like a ballista that he's holding in his hands.
Is there a picture of it there?
I don't know if there's a picture on here. Oh, there it is. There you go. We've seen it before.
Oh, okay. So they're like a giant bolt thrower.
Designed to kill monsters.
That's going to hurt. So that's fair enough. Let's say my monster has got 9 wounds, Andy. How would you determine how many wounds you get off me?
You would roll a d6 for each wound that the monster has, so that would be 9.
9d6.
No.
So that would
yes, and then for each one that's a 5+, you add those to 2.
So that would be on average 9d6. You'd expect to roll 3 dice that were 5 up on average, wouldn't you?
Which would make 5 damage a shot. But if you're shooting at something more substantial like a Star Drake with 16 wounds, you're going to be getting a lot more than that. So that sounds pretty potent against big monsters. That.
So the more wounds, the better.
Yes, the more wounds it has on its profile, the more damage you can do to it.
So what Age of Sigmar monster has the most wounds? Is it?
I think it's the
Gargant.
I think it is the Mega Gargant. I think they have
some
obscene amount of.
So 30d6, you'd expect to roll 10 5s up, wouldn't you? So that's 10 wounds plus 1. What?
Plus
damage
2.
Equal to 2 plus what? I don't get that bit. It's weird.
So you start off with 2 as your base, and then with the dice for each one that's a 5, you add 1 total.
Oh yeah. Oh okay. All right. Okay. So yeah, it would take you yeah, okay. So Gargant, you'd need like on average three successful shots and wounds from that thing to kill a Gargant. It's kind of fair enough, isn't it?
But it's not only that, it's if you're dealing that much damage in one shot, then you're knocking these big monsters down a couple of wound thresholds as well, aren't you? They're
But
going to be less potent. I
if
imagine
you
it's got
try,
good range on it.
yeah, if you tried that against something like the Cauldron of Blood, that wouldn't count 'cause it's not a monster.
Uh,
Or is it a
yes,
behemoth?
I don't think it has to be a monster. Just anything
Well,
with a lot of wounds, it'll be good against.
I don't know about that. I don't know. I haven't painted any of these cruel boys yet. I've built a bunch up. You know what I have painted? I've painted the gyro bomber.
Nice.
I painted gyro. I haven't put it on its stand and everything. And I'm just finishing off painting the Blood Bowl necromantic horror team. I think I've painted 5 of them. I'm just painting. Well, I'm just building and painting up the last 5, just because they've been sat there for too long. And I'm also painting Kurdos Valentin. So I'm painting a bunch of random stuff because I've pretty much got completed armies now. So
Well, with these cruel boys, they're previewing quite a few of the rules here, but we don't need to delve into them too much until the book is out.
but it's not out yet. Then the Cruel
No,
Boys.
they're not up for pre-order yet. The cruel
That's
boys,
weird.
nor the new Stormcast stuff. If you look at the Warhammer community homepage, it's very, very 40k centered this week.
But the thing is, they brought out these Cruel Boys already, right? Well, a lot of the models anyway.
Well, the ones in the Dominion box.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to scroll way down to find an Age of Sigmar on the page at the moment. So presumably it's going to be next week that they go up for pre-order. That would be nice. Now,
Is that all of them? The monsters, everything?
I think everything probably. Now, I did a video this week looking for the coolest Yndrasta, and to do that I went into the Stormcast Eternals Facebook group and asked people for permission to use their pictures in the video so I could compare them all about what was cool about them. And this person didn't get back to me in time to make it into the video, but it's a very cool one, so I thought I would put this one on the show afterwards. And I did lose the name of the person who painted this one though. But
That's real nice, man.
I thought this was a very nice one. Did you watch that video that I made yet? With all the other Yndrastas?
I saw it, but I didn't watch it.
Yet.
And yet, Andy, speaking of Yandastra, I don't see a rope on her spear. So in the game, every shooting phase, she can throw this spear like miles, and it hits like on a 2-up.
Now, I'm not sure
I don't
whether
see
she
how
actually throws it or whether she just like swings it and then it unleashes a bolt of energy from the tip.
I don't see how a spear can return to someone 5 times. Don't
That's
get
the
it.
one
Maybe
thing that's beyond believability for you.
See, that's another once per battle thing. It should be.
Now, what's this? Oh, it's a picture of my Stormcast Army. And while I had the gaming table out, I thought, why don't I just put the whole army out on it and take some pictures? So my entire Stormcast Army in all its glory. We've got all the heroes. So I've got slightly less heroes than I remember, actually. I've got a lot, though. See, I've got the Knight Venator, Lord Ordinator, Heraldor, the Knight Incantor, the Lord Veritant, the Knight Zeros, Lord Celestin on Dracoth, Druster, Stardrake, the Lord Relictor there. So it's a decent number of heroes, but there's way more than that with War Scrolls available in Stormcast now.
Now, I might be selling you a Celestin Prime as well.
That would be nice to
have. How many points do you think all these Stormcasts add up to then?
I could work it out, but it's got to be over 3,000.
Mm-hmm.
All those heroes in.
Is it anything?
Even
any other
at 2,000?
Like?
There's not that much Battleline in here, but at 2,000, I struggle to fit in my coolest things. So if I wanted to take the most expensive version of the Stardrake, for example, I'm sure I could get over 3,000.
Andy, would it mess up the rules if in a 2,000 point battle you didn't have to take any battle line? So if you're not familiar by what I mean by Battleline are troops like that. It's your bog standard archers, your guys with swords and shields. In the current rules, you have to bring a certain percentage of your army as your bog standard staple troops. Andy, how would it affect the game if you didn't have to take Battleline? You could just take whatever you wanted
Well, it
in
would be
terms
pretty
of
much
point.
like AOS was when it was first released, where people could just take whatever they wanted, and there were no points, if you recall
No,
those days.
yeah, no, but I'm saying there's still points, but you're not you you
But
don't have to
we
take.
would see wild armies, though, I think. I don't necessarily think it would be a horrendous thing, but we would see really crazy combos. And I think
You got to pay for
the
them.
idea with
You got
Battleline, there it's a way that the less powerful units can have a role in the army. But is that just lazy game design? If they
Is it?
can't make units useful enough, so they have to make them battle line to like force you to buy them and consider using them. You need them in your army, otherwise you can't do certain things. Is that just lazy that they haven't designed a balanced army list overall, so that you might want to take everything?
Or is it a marketing thing where they want to sell miniatures? They
I
want
don't
to
know. I don't
sell.
think they're that desperate to sell
Yeah.
liberators. Surely.
No, no, that's right. Um, that's an interesting question. It's a genuine question. Um, maybe we could try it out one day where we have a battle. You don't have to take battle line.
I would enjoy that because I wouldn't have to take my liberators. I could bring like some concussors instead.
Yeah, but you wouldn't get as many, would you?
No, I wouldn't. But the battle line
So
units are usually, not always, but often, I think battle line units are subpar compared to some of the other stuff in there. But because they're battle line, you have to take them anyway. Because if the battle line stuff was better than everything else, then you would just take that, wouldn't you? You would take endless battle line.
I mean, this is probably another show's question. You could build a whole show around this, but
Maybe we will next time.
yeah, is a balanced army one that has battle line, or are the points so well calculated that it doesn't matter? You know.
Skippage says asymmetrical warfare would be interesting to see. Heroes versus a slightly larger, more generically set up. Yeah, so if I just brought like all my Stormcast heroes against
Yes.
all your just regular troops,
Yes.
got equal points, see how it
That'd be,
went.
yeah.
It'd be interesting to try out that kind of. I'm sure
Well, you wouldn't.
once we've played a few more games, I'm sure we'll dabble into that kind of madness. It would be good clickbait at any rate, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think off the top of my head, you wouldn't suffer from bravery, would you? If you've
I'd never
just got
take Battle
heroes.
Shock test if I was just taking in heroes.
So that's one thing in your favor there. Um, what would be in my favor? Just potentially more attacks, more troops massed around you.
And the ability to hold objectives better, probably, because you've got more models.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, why do you think they brought objectives in as well? Like, Warhammer Fantasy never had any objectives apart from just to kill more of them.
I think with it being a
Isn't it?
less dynamic kind of, or more dynamic, should I say, kind of movement system, then you need
Yeah.
something on the battlefield to focus the troops on. In the old
I
days,
can't.
it was you were focusing on trying to get into like flanks and baiting charges and all that kind of thing, and it's harder to cut off enemy units in Age of Sigmar than it was in Warhammer Fantasy.
Yeah.
Like reroute them, send them the wrong way, and suddenly they're stuck facing the wrong way in a turn, and now they can't see anything.
I do like it. I kind of like it because chaff troops were just in the old game were just speed bumps, really, weren't they, or to just distractions. But now, chaff units, units. Oh, like these wolves we're seeing here, they'd be
Yes,
considered possibly chaff. That can be very good. They can win you a lot of points.
these were posted on the Discord server, which you should be joining now, and they were posted by Rich. And then this here, these liberators, they were posted in there by C.
Nice, man. Really cool. I love seeing people's miniatures. Will Matthews here in the chat is an interesting point, man. He remembers an old White Dwarf battle report with 7 Bretonnian foot knights all kitted out with magic weapons, fighting a whole army of lizard men. Kind of cool, right?
Now, I'm going to disappoint our audience on one count tonight, because we're not going to be able to do the full deep bath. Because we are capped at an hour tonight show. I do have to leave the house very shortly. So, I am of course going to thank the patrons, but not in the full baths. I have to accept that. Next week,
I love the deep bath.
Next
Maybe it can be a
week-
deep shower. Maybe it can be a quick shower.
Okay, maybe a quick shower then. So let's have the intro for it at least, because then you can get with the atmosphere a bit. So here we go.
Andy's Deep Bath.
Okay, so it's more like Andy's deep shower this week. So you're in the shower, it's a bit steamy, you want to subscribe, you want to pledge lots of money through Patreon, you want to subscribe to Remington Steel as well, you want to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, join the Discord server and the Facebook group. But the coolest people in the shower are certainly Roshi, Kim, John, Guy, Graham, Cedar, Simon, Nippleless, and Brad. Clearly, coolest people in the shower. Andy's deep shower. Deep bath will be back full power next week. Hopefully the Forest of Rem as well. We do need to conclude that story. And I wonder if Remington is going to find that when he gets back to his chaotic worshipping grounds, that the new Stormcast with like 1,000 dragons are going to be there waiting for him. So he's going to find that the paltry force that he's built up isn't going to be enough. We'll see.
Do you think people really like the Forest of Rem, Andy?
I think they do, yeah.
Do you think they're missing Witch Coven?
I don't know if they're missing Witch Coven.
Do you think you guys tell me? Do you like when we do these narrative sort of? We didn't do it tonight, but the narrative games, does it work? Let us know. Let us know.
I think it works. The question is, do people want it to be a separate video series? Be a better question.
Yes.
Having it tacked on to the end of the show, some people don't notice it because they don't make it all the way.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it should be a separate thing then, right?
It's something to consider.
Let us know. We're always looking to improve. And speaking of improvements, Andy, I like what you've done with the intro video.
Yes, I've slapped some extra footage on it, and it's going to be evolving over time. It's an ongoing project, this intro video.
I do like that. And what have we got to look forward to this week, Andy?
Well, this week we're going to be playing a game, 1,615 points. And then next week, the battle report will be coming hopefully quite early in the week. And then hopefully we can get another game in next week as well. That'd be nice. Also got some Kings of War battle report goodness coming up on this channel next week as well.
Oh, Lord.
And
go on.
I'm also thinking, because that finding the coolest Yndrasta video seemed to go down quite well, thinking maybe doing another like hunt for the coolest a particular model. So which model do you think I should do next? Let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll get a guest on to go over them with maybe even Mr. Remington.
Nice.
Be exciting.
So we had 3 games, Andy, haven't we? We had 3 games in succession. Daughters of Cain versus Stormcast. Obviously, I want to keep on with the Daughters of Cain. Do you guys think that's boring? Do you think I should try a different army now? I mean, I'm getting to know these girls. I'm getting to like them. So what I'm saying is, should I carry on just for a game or 2 more?
I think people will enjoy you getting to know the rules. And then once you've got that grounding in one army, you'll be able to pick up the more fundamental aspects of the game more easily then, because you're not constantly worried about your specific army rules. Then you'll be able to translate those basics of the game into your use of the other faction.
Got you.
I think that makes
sense. I think so. I'm going to keep with the Daughters of Cain then. Let's see what happens. Let's see if Andy can get revenge on me, or whether I can once again defy the odds and get another victory in for the girls. And I think if that happens, I think Andy's will probably stop playing with Stormcast. He'll be devastated.
I will be truly devastated, but as you can see, dragons will be in play. Can Rem deal with them? That might be the phrase expression he makes as the dragons are swooping down on his troops. Just imagine him going like, "Oh no!" Look at him there.
I'm going to be looking for a spell that can deal with dragons.
So, we shall see you either on the next show or the next battle report, whenever you next tune in. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description, subscribe and all that goodness. Send me all your money, of course. Subscribe to Remington, because he's promised that tomorrow is going to be the return of Remington's Pillow Talk. So you don't want to miss that. And all that remains to be said, well, 2 phrases. One which is kind of being shoehorned in there, which we'll see if it takes off, and then the main. So first of all, Seek is seeking you.
Love that.
Remington is a big fan of, but I think everyone knows that the true outro show is good night out there, whatever you are.
It's the Andy and Remington Steel Show on your screens tonight. It's the Andy and Remington Steel Show for your home delight. We're talking about Age of Sigmar and anything else that is cool. Talking about Warhammer Fantasy, it's easy to learn.